What's happening? Benton here. Was not expecting to go live again today. We're rolling, headed to Abilene, Texas, the Royal We. And just says I'll get there at 10:45 a.m. Central. What time is it? 7? Sun's maybe about to come up. Daybreak. Yeah, daybreak. And just outside of Oklahoma City, stopped for groceries. Originally, I was going to wait till I got to Lawton, Oklahoma. So this was what, southwest side of OKC, I guess. Is that where I was? So not the city limits proper, but, and folks may not be aware, I've had several run-ins with the general public in Oklahoma City. In fact, there's a video under my video tab. I believe it's still there. I may have privated it, but there's an incident I had during the pandemic, I had an incident with a security guard at a TA truck stop. And I vowed never to return, so I'm pretty sure I won't ever be going back there. Let's see, where was I? I just want to see where this Walmart was. Yeah, outskirts of Oklahoma City, like southwest side. Not sure what actual town I was in. And I got into it real bad with a woman, in a super center. This was, and I'll own some of this. This was in the same general time frame that I got into it with the security guard. And as we know, the pandemic was a strange time, but so I'll own some part in that. And that, of course, all of that was before the unlocking of the achievement, within the world of death and game of lies, the achievement of true knowledge of self/self-realization. Now, we did commit the sin, the royal we sinned, if you want to call it that, by temporarily strongly identifying with this realm as if it were, valid or as presented. And, that's certainly an error. I would assert that everything else was righteous, and my own, but that's not righteous. That's to fall below the standard. However, even when improperly identified, I still am generally able to conduct myself appropriately, which I would say I did. And I don't know how much I want to get into these details, but human hate is certainly the theme. Now, I'm recognizing with the further healing, so after this incident, and there was a lot of snow in the parking lot, so I'm, physically, it's a bit of a chore to push my basket all the way across the parking lot, and drag it over to the truck, the big truck. But I go into these body scans, and, we can talk about these various practices and all these things. And, I'm very sensitive, especially with the amount of healing and releasing of stagnated energies and what's going on in my tissues. There's times when in the past, maybe there's been an improvement physically, but then, because of my own emotions or my own, whatever I've had going on in the past, there's been times when it's backslid, right? When maybe I started to, instead of releasing this stuff, kind of backslid into bringing it upon myself to need to be released, if that makes sense. and never lost my temper. Didn't lose my cool, but there definitely was some interesting caveats in here to be, sussed out and what do they call that? Unpacked, right? And so eventually this story will probably be told. It's not that interesting. And remember, I'm quite sensitive and observant of my environment and the, lay expert in human psychology. There's the dynamics at play. And this certainly, I don't know that I would call it a matriarchy, but you get into these cultures, and this is probably one of those areas where the males, they're not men for the most part. And, it's a bunch of women leaders, right? The women are in charge of everything. And it's the males following the women around. And so when I was pushing my basket around, this is not the incident, but just sort of a background. And I heard there's people are stocking shelves because I don't know if they don't have overnight stockers anymore, or maybe it bleeds over. And of course, with the snowstorm, people wipe out the store anyway, down south. I don't know if Oklahoma City's technically, I guess, it doesn't matter. It's close enough to the south. Well, they're in the SEC now. OU is, so we'll go ahead and call it the South. Good enough. Culturally, we'll take them, I guess. Well, before I get into that, let's talk about the tissues a little more. So now I'm, the various practices and all of this, it's on me to make sure that, that in fact, having gone through this ugly business at the Walmart, that whatever is appropriate to release energetically and emotionally does in fact get released. So what causes the issues I'm finding is to identify with the validity of the feelings themselves, right? And to then start having notions of, I wish people weren't the way they are. Why are these people why are they behaving so hatefully, right? With such hatred. And why is it being directed at Benton? Well, we know why it's being directed at Benton. And I've noticed I get into certain little areas and pockets to where, the demons that infest a lot of these individuals, they really take umbrage to what I am, the symbolic representation. Yeah, the human is not aware of that consciously, but the wicked spirits that infest a lot of these people certainly are, right? And remember, I'm mean. I can't say I'm mean and nasty. Benton historically can get mean and nasty and insulting and with the best of them. And in fact, sadly, I'm quite skilled at it at times. And, one of those people, I am able to sort of, at times in the past, cut them to the bone with my words, perhaps. And I choose not to insult people or, but then when the neurodivergence kicks in, such as, and here was the improper identification, was to feel scolded or admonished when what I was doing was completely appropriate and expected at the self-checkout. Meanwhile, again, what did I talk about this morning on the first live stream? It's this realm treating me as if I must be guilty of something, right? And so I was guilty at the self-checkout of pushing past what were apparently the only two functional self-checkouts, which I had no way of knowing, and I'm going towards other self-checkouts that have green lights on the pole, right? Which is sort of the reasonable, rational thing to do, right? Makes the most sense. So I guess I will tell the story. But I want to own my error first, and then we'll back up and get some of the background information of the lead up to this. And because remember, whether the individuals are aware of my activities in the Walmart prior to this, the demons that infest these people are absolutely aware of it. That they know what level of energy I may have been spreading and engaging with. And, I did have a couple of decent actually 3 separate, and I hesitate to say human, because more and more I'm seeing anything attached to humans and humanity in a negative light. And realistically, any credit for the behavior, or it's really, we credit certain things of human nature, or humans, whether individually or collectively. When I say we, I mean, just for the purposes of the discussion, within the framework of the discourse, it's sort of referred to as human nature, humankind, and humanity, and all of this. But I'm beginning to really see clearly that it's the transcendence beyond the dead flesh, beyond the so-called human experience. It's the transcendence beyond that, right? And so arguably I had 2 or 3 interactions with other beings that transcended, the normal, what is more often seen in the dead flesh, even though at times there is sort of that performative aspects of the dead flesh, right? Where it's like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm well. Thanks for asking. Just the sort of the pleasantries and kind of the surface level, right? Hang on, I'm going to try to pass this fella. Yeah. This is probably the worst road as far as just the open road portion. I think this is the worst since I first left Chicago area, the first 2 hours in Chicago. Yeah, this is the worst. So I'm going to pass this guy at some point, but I'm really going to have to be careful and bide my time. I don't have to pass him, I guess, but I think I'd like to. I'm going to have to probably catch him on the uphill. I suspect it's a big truck. I suspect he's going to start hauling balls on the downhill. And he's got the good pavement. I got the bad pavement. But I feel completely comfortable driving the speed he's driving, and I'm on the ice and snow, and he's over there in the clear lanes. So that might be a difference in driving skill there, perhaps. We'll see if we can catch him. See if we can get him. Of course, he could do what the last fella did and get over and let both of us pass. But I don't reckon he's going to do that. For some reason, the fast lane is the clear lane. I'm not sure why they cleared the fast lane. It's kind of a bizarre thing to do, but whatever. Now, if he would just go 68 on he's going 68. If he just goes 68 on the dry ground or the drier ground, the clear pavement, but he won't. The moment I tuck in behind him, we'll be going 55 again. You know how that goes, right? Let's do it. Watch. I'm going to get behind him. We're going to go 55. But I got things I want to talk about. So, y'all already slowed down. Yeah, we're already slowed down. 64, 63, 62, 60, but it was 68 when he thought I might pass him. Like, hey man, 68's good. Let's just go 68. Why we got to go? Why you gotta slow down there, Bubba? I might be able to get him on this hill though. He's getting up ahead of steam though to get up it. So I don't want to try to race him down the other side. It's my problem. I need a bigger hill. Oh, wait a minute. My lane's starting to clear up though. Bear with me. Nah, that was a temporary. See, he's king of the road, you know. He's king of the road, see. So his, you know, he's deciding what we're gonna do out here. Well, I'm gonna back off and see if we can trust him to go at reasonable speed. If I can average over 60, that's good enough for me. But you know, I've talked about it a lot in the past with the pandemic, the idea of, you know, when two humans sort of come together or two people come together in the physical space and, you know, they have that proximity and they sort of have a little conversation and, you know, the energy spheres exchange energies and information, and you know that's healing for both people. So I had a couple of, you know, decent little short conversations, and you know one of them was about 90s music, and you know had a good interaction with a fella, and then I kept it moving, you know, and I'm a bit humorous and witty from time to time, you know. And again, all the demons that infest these people in it's a very much a demonized environment. I'd say, you know, effectively all of the Walmart supercenters are that way. In my opinion. Now, see, here's the thing. How did I catch this guy? See, he's not really driving this fast. He just wants to be, he just doesn't want me to get around him for whatever reason. So I think we're probably just going to hit the slow lane and go 60 and just let him have it. Because my protracted experience of death doesn't need to involve certain things. I bet you we creep right back up on him though. At 60. We'll see. Maybe I'll help clear some of this snow by driving on it. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for tolerating no live chat, but I just can't. It's not even that I can't. I'm really just no longer willing to engage, at least at this time. Certainly reserve the right to change my mind. But you know, I can tell that this in fact was healing and a release of something that needed to be cleared out of my own energy sphere. But it's interesting because as it's happening, you know, that's not necessarily apparent. And then when we get into the idea of mastery, like I was talking about and claiming credit for on the first stream, you get into notions around, well, the way I handled the situation at the checkout, you know, that very easily could have crossed over into, you know, ugliness, bad behavior, you know, in ways that would have caused me to at least temporarily, you know, hold on to some ill will or some just inappropriate energies. Whereas this is, you know, the stagnated resentments and hatred, right, of the past, seeing its opportunity through an experience of those of specific emotions to then leave via a process of being healed and cleared, right? And that's something that continues, you know, on an ongoing basis. So now he's way down the road. How did I catch up to him? I guess maybe he was too chicken I think what it was is he was too chicken to pass that other fella. And then the other fella saw that I was going to pass him on the snow, so he just went ahead and got over for us. I think that's what happened. So either way, we'll speed up to 65. That's fast enough. Oh, he finally got over to the right lane. Of course, now the right lane's more clear. It's just anyway. Let's try not to talk about the road conditions. But it is what they're trying to say is a historic winter storm. But I don't know if that sounds hyperbolic, right? Could be, I guess. Meanwhile, I blew $10 on some pre-cut up watermelon, and before we even talk about that exorbitant price, it's no good. Some of this watermelon is just no good. It looks great visually. In fact, I wasn't even in the market. I just saw it and I was like, damn, I got to have that. It looks fantastic. The texture's way off. It's getting thrown out. But I do have two watermelons I get to cut up myself. And let's not get into TMI or specifics, but I did have when I talk about this acceptance and healing of the large intestine, the colon, and all of this. It's quite powerful healing this morning through a, normal bodily function. So watermelon certainly assists in that process, in my experience. So I ate more watermelon than I planned to yesterday, which is part of the reason why I even needed to stop today, although we were going to need eggs either today or tomorrow, so might as well get them today. So I'll have a fairly busy day tomorrow. So here I am going to self-check out, and the neurodivergence kicks in because I'm immediately scolded and admonished for being foolish enough to be headed towards some green lights, right? Now, when I'm really on my game, I'll just do something like make a joke out of it or just not engage. Looking back on it, what would I do different? And, not healing notwithstanding, just in a vacuum, I think I'd probably just push my buggy just out the exit without checking out and then just loop around and kind of start over. Because by then, the lady would have said whatever she said, and I would have had time to process what she's saying, and I would have then decided, was it even worth me addressing her tone? Because that's where we get into the human hatred, right? The title of the stream, Human Hate, because that's what she directed at me, right? And, the demons that infest her certainly hate what I am, right? And then my own hatred, my own anger and resentments of the past that haven't, that are seeking their opportunity to be healed and cleared, right? So now you have two energies. When I come into proximity with her, you have the same level of energy, but different purposes, right? And then, of course, my own unawareness of this in the moment. And, of course, the waking dream, surrealistic unreality deja vu all over again, which is, here's where the undiagnosed fake autism and the neurodivergence kicks in, is because, yeah, there is a turning of the other cheek. Like, I'll forgive her tone. Now, I did match it. So she's like, sir. And I'm like, ma'am. I'm just coming right back at her with the same tone of voice, which, that's neither here nor there. That's just sort of within the bounds of fair play. But remember, it quickly becomes a never wrestle a pig, you both get muddy and the pig likes it. And as much as I like to say, well, I'm the pig, and I wasn't the pig in that scenario. And I don't know that Benton has been the pig in a scenario like that ever since the unlocking of the achievement of true knowledge of self. So those days are probably over. I'll admit in the past to enjoying, on some level, getting satisfaction and enjoyment out of some of these interactions. This was not that. This was almost to be reminded, oh, well, this is what people are, and this is what this is what your dead flesh is, Benton. Like, because what's the big deal? Well, I agree. What is the big deal about being talked to like a piece of garbage and admonished by the help, right? I'm old enough and from an old school, and she was my age or older, this old woman, crypt keeper, right? You ever see one of these people that looks like the crypt keeper from Tales from the Crypt? The fucking crypt keeper, man. So that's really, here's your sign not to engage, sir. Please do not engage with the crypt keeper. But I think in the final analysis, it's probably for the best overall. And then clearly I'm carrying something around that I wasn't completely aware of. And more correctly, I was carrying something around that was trying to find an opportunity to be unleashed, but then to go around picking a fight with somebody, right? So now how much of this is I'm unknowingly just not going to do something overtly to cause a confrontation, but the moment it starts to happen, instead of just letting it fizzle out, I will own, within, again, the bounds of fair play, I'll own to sort of egging it on or whatever. And then you get into the dynamics of the women are in charge in a lot of these environments. And I don't just mean because it's a workplace, just like culturally, a lot of these guys, it's all about mama, and it's all about mama's feelings, right? Because it's almost never about daddy's feelings, which is okay, because unless daddy has emotional problems, and some of them do, certainly, he probably don't want it to be about his feelings. And in fact, I realize now that daddy's feelings, and I don't like thinking about myself that way, but the reality is, visually, my tone of voice, my body language, my age, I do represent sort of that archetype, right? Of authority or daddy or stern, maybe we're in trouble, right? But then with the people who did not grow up with strong male figures, and then remember, a lot of the women are going to end up having daddy issues. Oh boy, they're trying to create a conundrum up here. I can already see some of them ain't too well acquainted with the ice and snow here. I'm finna pass everybody. Because Flatbetter, that's how I caught him. He's slowing down. So we don't hesitate. Now we got to slow down a little bit because other people are passing. So I got to make sure I got enough room to maneuver if the shit goes south. But bear with me. We're going to have to. Oh, now he's figured it out. Now he's figured out that if he's sheriff of the road. He does not want to let me pass him. So now he's hit the fast lane. But he waited until now, but he's braking. See, he's not good at driving. Why are you braking on the ice and snow, sir? You shouldn't be needing to apply your brakes. Anyway, I think I can get through this without paying it too much mind. So bear with me. So, because all of this is important, because I think most people would just sort of blame, everything but themselves. So I need to own, not necessarily blame, but my own, what I chose to engage with. Ultimately, it's, what am I choosing to engage with? And so you had a customer, right, at the self-checkout, and he was a male. He might have been a man. It's hard to say. Maybe. I wasn't really paying him no mind. Now, I'd say he probably not a man because he stuck his nose in my business. In fact, he actually sort of got the whole thing going as far as escalated it to a bit of a he confronted me at a certain point. I was physically confronted by a customer, a male customer of, I don't know, 30. I'm just going to guess about 30 to 30, probably about 30, maybe 35, kind of a Oklahoma, I don't know, that good old boy. But see, then you get into drug addiction. Is this a meth user? Certainly demonized. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then the reality is, as a white guy, and he had testosterone, a white guy with testosterone, there's a high likelihood he's on paper, meaning parole, probation, charges pending, maybe all three, right? And so I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I'm aware of this in the moment when he, committed a crime. You can't, I don't know if people know, legally, you can't just aggressively approach somebody with a certain type of body posture and say certain things. It's an actual crime on the books. It's actually assault. That's why they call it. So I was assaulted, but it's assault and battery. So nobody touched me, of course. Funny how they're not. And I'm not one of these people that's, oh, I'm a badass and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm good. I'm not going to fight them anyway. But somehow they just know not to put their hands on me. Oh, shit. Let's break. Hey, I know. Let's drive on the dry pavement and let's get to ice and snow and let's apply our brakes. That's a great plan. Wow. I'm impressed. Who would do such a thing? Could have done all that braking back there when it was dry, but yeah, see, this guy's flatbedder's either going to take the exit. Yeah, I think he's taking the exit. Oh, are they too chicken shit to pass the cop? Surely not. Hang on, we got to figure out what this is. Oklahomans, not the best drivers, certainly. We're on it now. We're on a sheet of snow and ice. Going around a little bend. We're hitting the overpass, so I got to be even more careful. Hold on, we're almost around. Oh, yes, yeah, state trooper. Oh, we're sliding. Yeah, we're sliding. We are sliding. Trooper's going to let me around or not. I think he's trying to slow down for me. Yeah, it's nice of him. Yeah, it's nice of him. The majority of the state troopers I've ever interacted with are pretty good folks. Well, shouldn't even say that. By law enforcement standards. Oh, and now flatbedder. See, I've showed him the way. I've ran a 4-minute mile. I've showed the flatbedder the way. Yeah. Now he's seen me survive it. Anyway, we got a little hairy there for a second. I ain't gonna lie. About 15 seconds of, I wonder what's about to happen here. But fortunately, we were doing things appropriately. But either way, watch out for them overpasses. Starting to wish I'd left a little earlier. And so my rules of engagement have changed because I'm, in the past, I know it sounds kind of silly, but I can actually be fairly intimidating and, pretty strong-willed and all of this. So, some of the way I would handle situations in the past is not how I'm going to handle them now, because really this guy's none of his business. But see, remember, it's mommy's emotions. So it's the lady worker. And all she had to do was say, "You're right, sir. It makes total sense that you saw green lights and walked towards them. Like, yeah, I understand. It's not, I wouldn't have had anything to say, but she's got to have a reason to not be wrong. See, she's in charge. It's a matriarchy. She represents authority in their little world, right? So she's not going to give an inch, but I'm right. And again, I'm wrong because it's like, well, there's nothing to win. There's nothing in it for me other than this release of the stagnated energies anyway. But it's also good to be reminded of just what in the world's going on, right? To be reminded of where the being, is, right? And what's going on, you know. Um, Now we're back on the ice. Yeah, oh, Fort Sill. Okay, I see. Once we get out of this area, we should be in Lawton and all this. Yeah, it's just these people. Because see, what they're doing is they're driving very, very, very slow, but they're all tailgating each other. So it's like, yeah, okay, I can appreciate the reduced speed out of an abundance of caution. So why are we all tailgating? It's 10 cars and they're all tailgating each other. It's like, okay, well, what's up with that? I do appreciate, I can understand the reduced speeds, but what are we doing with everybody's driving in one big bunched up group? That's the part that's not really uh, computing. It's kind of fun out here though, as long as I make sure not to get too froggy with it. If I was all the way loaded, all the way heavy, this would be a piece of cake. So the load's only about 18,000, and it may not even be that much. If it's 40 plus, it'd be a different ball game out here. But either way, and my thing is, I'm equal as a person, right? Just as a born in America, employed, not a criminal. Just I have equal status to these people. But remember, I don't, because like it or not, folks, feminism and all of these matriarchy and all of these gender dynamics and daddy issues and mama's emotions, it's become so prevalent that I'm with the fellas she's the high status. She has the high status because she's got a vagina and she's mama. And her feelings must take precedent. Meanwhile, do you think the crypt keeper gives a fuck that me and her are now having a back and forth about what a green light means? Because at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm good at arguing and I know I'm right. And then if I've got something to say and I feel like saying it, I'm just going to say it. So, that's just, it is what it is. And the moment she stops talking, I'll probably stop talking. And of course, immediately it's put on me, like, why don't you just stop talking or whatever? And it's like, I can become quite pedantic and get into this thing of, well, I'm just responded. I said what I had to say, and now I'm responding to, what's been said. It's back and forth, right? So why is Bitten the one that's got to stop? Well, because Bitten probably represents daddy to some extent. And mommy's feelings, they take precedence and they outweigh and they sort of just, when allowed to move about unchecked, mama's emotions, they always hold sway, right? And now, of course, I didn't grow up that way. In fact, I wasn't callous, but, mom's emotions are just neither here nor there in my life, unless we was on a road trip and then her anxieties took everything over. But, she had a lot of fear around, she got, car trips, just generalized anxiety. But either way, And I know these dynamics, but that's not really. I'm just more paying attention to, you know, I know I'm not right. I know I'm not. I know I'm right. So whatever her argument is, it's invalid because she's just, and it's a woman telling me why I'm wrong, and they're experts at this. My second wife, who just, I'm saying novel things she's never considered, and when we're in it, not even an argument, it's just, it's a woman thing where they can always tell a man why he's wrong. So she's proceeding to tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. So, and then, and see, Jesse Lee Peterson said this. He said, which I think there's a lot of wisdom. He said, he talks a lot about the dynamics with the mother, and, a lot of the problems created for men has to do with their relationship with their mother. And I can't really describe it the way he did, but it makes sense. And he's basically saying, he said, when men resolve all of this, he said they'll stop listening to women, which I think is interesting because I'm not listening to I don't know what she's saying. All I know is she's wrong and I'm right. And I'm reminding in basic tones like, well, surely we can all agree that, generally speaking, a green light has a specific meaning. And then she's like, yeah, but in this case, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I understand. But see, what I just wanted to acknowledge that, in a vacuum with no other information to go on and not being the person that Walmart's hired. I haven't agreed to work for Walmart to get all the registers online. Meanwhile, the store's been open for 30 minutes. Why are we still open with self-checkouts? I mean, I really could have been shitty and been like, well, isn't this all supposed to be done before I get up here to check it? Like, what is this? And see, first I tried to go to some checkouts, some self-checkouts that are nowhere near where they were because they had green lights. And I walk over there and they're roped off, right? It's like, okay, well, I guess those are booting up or whatever. But so why is the green light on as the thing boots up? And then it's sort of back to my contention around, Walmart supercenters with all this technology. And on some level, I've noticed for years, the parking lot and the fucking inside of the store, it is, in some ways, it's like this, like a Nazi prison camp experiment where it's, the realm and the algorithms and, the demonic forces. And I'm convinced that, all of this sort of coalesces and conspires and works together in an environment like that, if that makes sense. Because really, well, I mean, just it doesn't even make sense. And all she had to say was, "Yeah, you're right. I wish they'd change that." But remember, there's no common ground because her and Daddy, they divorced or they don't get along. Her baby dad, it's just whoever that is, right? Her dad. There's no scenario to getting on the same page and just moving forward, right? Because I'd like to walk over there and not talk at all, right? That's my preference. Let's not converse. There's really no reason to speak to each other. Or, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm well. Thanks for asking. How are you? Blah, blah, blah. We're good. But this was literally the tone. Sir, because I've done something wrong because I pushed my buggy towards green lights. So I'm guilty. I'm wrong. I got egg on my face. I'm ashamed, right? No, I mean, seriously. And see, this is the forgiving of the first transgression. As I'm starting to check out, my mind is like, hey, you're talking to me like I'm one of your kids. Like, I'm a customer. Like, what is this? But, I'm not going to be like, get the manager down here type shit. But so pretty quickly, and again, I understand it's my tone and it's what I look like and it's my body language. Like I'm aware of all of that. I know, but again, I'm a person. And so this is how what we're describing here is men have listened to women and children. And that's been the error. And in fact, males I can't even call them men. Males have so capitulated to the entreaties and the protestations of women and children, and I do put them in a category together in that sense. That see, I individually can't lose my status unless I misbehave. Collectively, males in America have lost what historically could have been viewed as a higher position than women. And, you know, at times in certain contexts would have been inarguably considered women and children in a category of lower status than a man, right? Then you even get into gentlemen and ladies and all of this. So remember, I'm the nigger. So I'm the nigger, and I'm clearly, you know, this is the outskirts of Oklahoma City, but, you know, they know I ain't from there. And the demons certainly know, you know, the cat's out of the bag on the truck driving. And, you know, the demons have full knowledge of whatever's going on, you know, in my interactions thus far in the Walmart. And meanwhile, if she's the never wrestle a pig, you both get money, the pig likes it. She likes it on some level, you know. And it is, you know, whether she finds me attractive or not, it is, you know, attention from a negative attention is still attention. So it's in some way attention from a, you know, a certain category of male or man. You know, that's also not lost on me. But, and I know I'm sort of breaking this all down to the nth degree, but it's all pertaining, certainly. Man, now we're in a one-lane construction zone. We are really crawling. And that's the fucking plow up there crawling. Wonder if he's doing that on purpose. Maybe they don't want people crashing in these construction zones, maybe. Shut down the whole fucking interstate. I-44. I'm starting to think I'd rather just took my chances with DFW, but it's too late now. This is unnecessary. We're going to unnecessarily slow speed. And the challenge for me is where's the fucking edge of the road here? Because it's not really apparent. I don't want to accidentally run off the road here. And why don't these people trust their judgment? Half of them need me to pull out the pass before they can pull out the pass. It's like, hey, little car, why didn't you let me pass you? Because now I got to pass you, but you're going faster. So I gotta get over on the ice and pass you. See, why didn't you let me pass first? Well, we can't trust them to think things through to that extent. Well, I'm gonna pass you once you figure out what speed you're driving there, Bubba. If you'll let me, because I'm not going 55. But I guess he's speeding up because I was speeding up. I just need you to pick a speed so I can figure out when I can safely pass you, Bubba. Looks like 55 is his safe speed. Fair enough. And then, of course, you get into the ego battles and all of this. And humans creating all this static for each other, right? So the 30-something, you know, maybe a meth user, maybe not. He's a fairly thin fella, but, you know, you can tell he had some testosterone to him. And hell, I'm 50, so I ain't trying to mix it up with anybody, but certainly not somebody 20 years younger than me, but I ain't scared, you know. So he gets off in my business and, you know, telling me to more or less, why don't you shut up? And it's like, you know, my standard thing in the past would have been like, hey, man, this ain't your business. Mind your business. But, you know, I don't want to escalate it. And it's, you know, I know I can always fall back on correctness, right? That I'm correct. And again, do I need to be correct? Because I'm really not correct. Or more correctly, my behavior, if my behavior falls below a certain standard, I can make myself no longer correct. And I've certainly made those mistakes in the past. And then there's also a Walmart worker that I don't know, maybe he's not on the clock, but it's clear that he sees her as some sort of authority figure. But he's younger. He's maybe mid-20s, I'm guessing. You know, and he's probably of the same generation as the 30-year-old, I'm guessing. So maybe what I think is a 30-year-old is just maybe he's late 20s, you know, Gen Z, older Gen Z, maybe. I don't know how old is the oldest Gen Z by now? I don't really know. It didn't strike me as a millennial. I think a millennial would have minded their own business. Just my opinion, but. And you know, I'm not gonna just let strangers tell me what to do, but I'm carefully, you know, choosing how I'm responding, and it's not too much longer until there he is. He's walking up on me, right? He's walking up on me and he's shifting his weight and he's adjusted his posture to load up in case he wants to punch me, right? And as a left-hander, I can't express to y'all how just comical this is to me, because, and they say that, you know, some of the so-called anthropologists or whoever, they think that there's really no reason for left-handedness to still exist, and that in fact it can be quite the advantage in combat. So that's perhaps the main reason it still exists. So as a left-hander, you know, when somebody that probably doesn't really know how to fight, when they position their body and they load up to just throw a right-handed haymaker, like, it's just comically obvious to me what they're doing. And if for some insane reason he started to throw it, I can get my left arm up. Just, it's so fucking ridiculously easy to protect my head, you know. Like, he's never beat me to that spot unless he's going to need some kind of subterfuge, you know. He's going to have to trick me. If he thinks he's going to load up and swing, it's just he's going to have almost no chance to hit me. But, and I'm just like, what are you going to do? Beat me up? I'm like, what is this? You're going to beat me up in the Walmart? And, you know, he's just on and on about whatever. And I don't even know what he's saying. He's on and on about whatever he's on and on about. And I think he realizes pretty quickly that I can't, you know, he's not going to be able to intimidate me. But at a certain point, before, I guess he needs to save face. It's hard to know his motivations before he goes back to where he started. And I'm telling the story out of sequence, so I'm not real good with recounting stories. But before he goes back where he came from, he tries to make me apologize, which I just completely ignore. I just completely ignore that request. It's like, well, I don't know, you know, it's just, I don't even respond to that, because, you know, if for some reason I've done something to apologize for, I'm in charge of that, and I'm really good at when appropriate. But at some point in all of that, I don't remember the sequence. See, he tipped his hand. The demons tipped their hand, and he tipped his hand because he was like, and you know, this is what people do. They try to put me out by myself on an island, and the three of them are the locals, right? And they all know each other to some extent, probably. And they're trying to put me out and alienate me right? So it's like, man, I hate. It's basically some version of I hate people. Like and I think, and since I'm really good at reading, tone of voice and nuance, and I've been hearing this in the algorithms, some of the stuff that filters out of TikTok, and a lot of people are expressing it's sort of a taboo thing, but and I know Millennial Steam talks about it a lot on his channel. It's this idea of just you can really tell that people ain't really into interacting with people anymore. And meanwhile, the demons know I've already been in there and I've had at least 2 positive interactions with other beings, right? Some version of namaste, perhaps. The divine in me recognizes the divine in them. That's my understanding of namaste as a greeting, right? I can probably go a little faster than this. 62. Oh, good. We got a service area up here. But see, now I need to piss, but I've done passed enough cars. See, I hesitate to pull over because if all these cars I pass, I'm going to have to pass everybody back. It's going to be a pain in the ass. I'm out here by myself. But let's see, how long we've been driving. How long can we hold it? Oh, I probably forgot to take a leak before I left the Walmart. I wouldn't say worked up, but I was still processing the event. Right. And so now that the first guy gave up, and I will give him some kudos. He figured out, and see, this is what I mean by as he's walking up on me, my thoughts are, and remember, I don't feel really any type of way about it other than like, oh, am I going to have to get an adrenaline dump here and physically defend because you never know. He might just start whooping my ass. I don't fucking know what's going to happen. And, fair enough. I mean, not that I deserve that, but it's just, I recognize that just like I can go in there and shoot my mouth off, if he can do the crime, if he can do the time, he can do the crime. I mean, he can wander over and start punching me in the head if he wants to, right? Like, I don't control that, I can shoot my mouth off. And that seemed to be the general consensus is, that I'm mouthy or whatever, but it's like, and I think what he called me out on was just immediately called me rude, and you don't have to be rude. And again, I can become quite pedantic and be like, well, how do you know how I have to be? Do you have any experience being me? Like, how could you possibly know what I need to be like? And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Huh? I don't get it. And then see, I can always double down on the righteousness. I can always bring it back to the righteousness. See? So now the hilarious part is when it died down, and then now the other fella, he's got to put his 2 cents in to defend Mama. Meanwhile, Mama can fight her own motherfucking battles. And if Mom tells me to get fucked, I mean, I might just say, well, fair enough, Meanwhile, she hasn't said anything rude to me, other than the initial sir, the initial admonishment, which I did forgive the first transgression because, and part of the story I didn't tell was that when I went back to start scanning my items, I considered giving her an earful around, her tone, but to turn the other cheek is to forgive her for her tone, right? Because, that was wrong. And that was a transgression against me because she's talking to me like I'm one of her kids. So do I really want to open a can of, hey, you can't talk to me like I'm one of your kids. And then it's just going to be like, I'm not talking to you like you're one of my kids, or I don't have kids, or whatever the fuck. Or I got grandbabies your age. Who the fuck knows? Whatever they might say. Just the possibilities are endless of what they might respond with. Why even go there? Yeah, I'm going to have to stop as much as I don't want to. And thank you for I think we got up to 5 people earlier and maybe 7, and then they tried to stick in there with me, but it's a bit of a slow burn over here with these stories sometimes. And I'm still processing, right? Part of this is I need to get through it and accept it. Well, I choose to, for my own purposes. So this, you know, I'm a bit of a talker out louder at times. The INTJ, you know, the introverted intuition with the secondary extroverted thinking. So that, you know, tends to at times lend itself to the talking out loud or talking things out, even if I'm talking to myself. And the Walmart worker guy, he was a real piece of shit. And so, and again, I suspect that, you know, the first guy, if he is on paper, he probably realized at a certain point that, you know, he's at least violating his motherfucking probation or his parole if he's on paper. You know, he can't just be confronting people. And that, yeah, that's technically a crime, by the way. I didn't tell him that, but I think because that was my thoughts when he was getting into my personal space a little bit. And I'm sort of leaning away, you know, kind of getting ready with my left arm if I got to, you know, if I need to start taking evasive action. And, you know, my thoughts was this just profiling somebody and playing the odds. He's probably on paper. Or who knows, maybe he's got his life together and, you know, if he were to get arrested or charges pressed, then, you know, maybe it just is something as simple as losing his job because he had to spend the night in jail or whatever, right? I mean, who even knows? Seemed like an overall upstanding type of citizen, but in places like Oklahoma City, you know, that especially white guy of a certain, just looks a certain type of way, you know, there's a pretty high likelihood of criminality and drug abuse and, you know, all of these things. And again, parole and probation. And so now I got so I think he just said, fuck it, there's nothing in this for me. And he just left, which, hey, good on you, buddy. He didn't even say bye. He just, because, you know, I'm having to scan the environment and keep track of the potential combatants. And at a certain point, I reckon he's gone. I didn't even see him leave. He just split. And that's further evidence to but then there's also, is this guy going to wait on me outside? So now it's funny how my brain just tracks all of this. So I remember on my way out the door, better be paying attention in case this guy's lurking about around the corner to, you know, do something to me. You know, that's possible, right? Shit. Yeah, I'm going to have to stop. Back. See a vehicle back there too. Although they might be catching me anyway. I don't know. I haven't passed anybody in so long. And if it's those last people, I should be able to pass them fairly easily. So yeah, we'll pull over to the side here. And here's the thing is this a shoulder? Yeah, it's got to be. It's a gigantic fucking potholes. It's another thing about the ice and snow. Sometimes you end up in some potholes that you can't quite see. Of course, we lock the diff so we don't lose traction. See, is that flatbedder? Flatbedder gonna catch me. Probably. Anyway, bear with me just a moment. Let me pee in a jug. Slow boat to Abilene. And so, and the funny part is reviewing all this in my mind, and now with you folks, whoever's willing to listen to this, you know, you could tell it was some version of neither here nor there for her, or just, you know, whatever demons infest her, you know, seeking to feed, right? You know, and all of them, really, all three of them infested with demons. And, you know, am I going to fall to a level with my engagement and performance where the demons got something to feed on, right? Well, that's a different truck driver. Okay. Yeah, we might not. He might be going fast enough. Anyway, yeah, he seemed to be moving at a pretty good clip. Well, there ain't really that many cars out here. And so if new folks have joined, we're in excruciating detail going through an experience I had at a Walmart in Oklahoma City, the general area of Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City's a fucking shithole. I mean, even with respect to other shitholes, like it's something's going on spiritually in Oklahoma City. And I've seen some really bad true crime cases of horribly abused children, and I'm not even going to think about that right now, but hopefully ever. But pretty bad shit going on, and most places there's unfortunately bad shit going on, but it seems particularly bad in OKC. Of course, the meth has been a huge deal for a long time, but I remember one time before I got into it. This was a different story when I got into it with a different woman, and during the pandemic, and I dropped my trailer at the truck stop and I bobtailed to the Supercenter. It was getting later in the day. I don't like going later in the day. It's part of the reason we ended up at this one, because I got there right when they opened at 6. That's how we ended up at that particular location. But it was so bad that I just looking at the fucking demons, the demon infested humans milling about the parking lot, I almost just turned around and left. It was so bad. I was just like, damn, I didn't realize that Oklahoma City was this bad. And of course, it's all white folks, but just scum, right? And humans filled with hate, right? And these three were to some extent, and maybe the one guy, he was like a little ethnically or racially ambiguous, not a regular white guy, but that's part of the mix, white guy was in the mix somewhere. Kinky hair, who knows? Don't know, don't care. Let me have a little sip of water here. Now he wants to threaten to kick me out. They're just like, hey, more or less, you need to, why don't you just go ahead and check out and leave? And I'm basically like, well, that's what I'm doing. But anyway, but right before the first guy, the first confronter left, I let it all die down. And I said to him, because remember, he got in my business and he got in my face. And I don't even say that, I don't even use that phraseology, but he did get in my face. He stepped to me, right? And so I let it die down. And then I basically said, unless you want to, because he's still trying to jaw jack and make it seem like I'm wrong. So it died down. And then I'm like, unless you want to keep discussing what does a green light mean? And then, boy, it all just started up again, right? The body language was like, if this was a comedy show or a sitcom or a movie, it would have just been hilarious, It would have been hilarious, because then it's almost like they're just throwing their arms up like, can you believe this guy? And now we're back to, you're being rude. And it's like, well, I mean, that's your opinion. I got my own opinions. And then they're trying to tell me to shut up. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all get to talk, right? I mean, how come y'all get to talk and I don't? They're like, I didn't say that, but that's sort of my attitude is why are we shutting people up? And then the old Benton would have been more like, well, I don't think you're going to be able to make me stop talking, but I don't even go there anymore. There's no reason to further invite that. And see, that does cross over into the ugliness and the, where maybe I'm going to end up what could be, the healing and cleansing and release of certain stagnated energies that could cross over into actually, more detrimental, more of a detriment. Oh, we're definitely sliding now. Yeah, some of these roads in spots, it's pretty fucking bad, I have to say. 68 was a little too quick for that particular stretch of road. Now we're back to, it was fast lane clear. Now we're back to slow lane clear. Yeah, I guess it's just whatever the plow people feel like clearing, I guess. I don't know how that works. But it's just funny watch. And of course, the woman didn't react at all, the crypt keeper. It was the two guys. They had a kind of a comical body language reaction to that. But then now the Walmart male wants to go into, he's trying to misinterpret it as if I'm talking to her. I'm like, no, I'm talking to that guy. And I pointed at him. And that's the most aggressive I ever got was I made, like a finger. You don't intend it as a finger gun, but it's, it's a fucking, I'm gesturing as if my hand is a gun, whether that was in my mind or not, I said, no, I'm talking to that guy. And much to his, I will give him some credit. He got the fuck up out of it. And not because he's scared of me. I think he realized there's really no point in him hanging around. And technically he's done, at that point, he's done checking out. So to continue to stay would just be, a little too obvious, right? Like, why are you hanging out settling my hash, buddy? And so now we get into Walmart worker guy wants to continue to just basically tell me what to do. Like, more or less like, you're lucky I don't kick you out. And, and again, the old bit would have been like, well, there's lots of Walmarts. I don't, it would be inconvenient to have to stop again at one of the Walmarts, thousands of locations. I'm probably about to pass, 50 Walmarts between here and where I'm going. But yeah, I'll admit, and I didn't say any of this, but yeah, I'd rather just go ahead and get this done. Certainly, hell, I could have just abandoned my cart when this all started and just fucking left. I don't really need it. I don't need the job. I don't need the aggravation. I don't need the groceries. At the end of the day, preference, right? So a lot of it's preference. It's funny because that's one of the smaller, usually when I stop at Walmart, I buy way more things, but they didn't have my black beans, and then I went ahead and grabbed the sardines just because it was the last 4 they had, and could have gotten more pear halves, but I still got probably like 5 cans of that. I don't need any apricots right now. I've cut my normal fruit intake in half, so I need to eat these blueberries before they go bad, so I didn't even buy any more blueberries. And I was out of red grapes, so really watermelon and red grapes is all I bought that I had to have today. But then, if not tomorrow, it would have been the next day on eggs. So I got a fridge, it's like might as well get the eggs. And fortunately, they had the ones I like to get. I've been going half and half on the those Vital eggs. Of course, some of them are artificially orange. It's like, oh, orange yolks. It's like, yeah, but I can kind of tell. There's a certain, they feed them turmeric. But either way, I like them. They're good eggs. And I've been doing half those, and then half of the Eggland's Best omega-3. I like those a lot. So I got 4 dozen eggs. And I almost didn't get water, but I went ahead and got some Fiji, which I do prefer the Mountain Valley, but the Mountain Valley, they don't have a 1 liter. They just have it's like a pint, 500 milliliters. Too many fucking bottles. Ends up to be too many empty bottles everywhere in the truck. But anyway. And so now the guy wants to just start telling me what to do and ordering me around. And it got real comical because at a certain point, it's like he's telling me to leave, and I'm like, buddy, I'm physically walking out of the store, like, and then I'm like, why are you following me? You know, it's like, are you going to walk me out? And it's funny how, and at a certain point, I said that to him. I was like, am I going to get beat up? And what are you going to do? Beat me up? Like, and I didn't say it like a challenge. Like, I'm just curious. Like, am I actually about to get my ass kicked in the fucking Walmart here? You know, that'd be a first, but I mean, I guess it's within the realm of possibility, but you know, and then now I'm like, what, are you going to follow me out? Are you going to follow me outside? Like, what is this? And, you know, culturally, you get into some of these dynamics of, you know, sort of them fighting words, or, you know, the male gesticulations and the body posturing and, you know, all of these things. And, you know, I'm like, basically like, you're telling me to do the thing I'm already doing. Like, what is this? I'm confused, you know, and while also reminding him that, well, yeah, I mean, I've got opinions and I've got something to say, like, you know, and again, it's so the ultimate lesson in all of this, you know, outside of the healing and the cleansing and the releasing of certain stagnated energies and the demons, you know, seeking to feed and not, you know, finding, you know, seeking rest and finding none in a way. I feel pretty fucking good, I have to say, overall. And kind of lost my point, but it's all pertaining on some level. It's a shame about this watermelon. But I know from experience, if I eat all this watermelon, it's just got too much. It's too fleshy, and it just doesn't go through the digestive system. There's too much flesh. The flesh to juice ratio is way off. But anyway, too much flesh, not enough juice. And really, ultimately, it's kind of a low class thing. And, you know, see, if we're going to have equality, and if I as a man am equal to a woman, and I'm not asserting that, but within the context of human experience, then, you know, when she admonishes me and corrects me, and then I forgive the first transgression, but then, you know, as is my right, you know, I make a comment as to what a green light typically represents. And so her first response to me saying, you know, basically like, in my world, that green light, the fact that those are all lit up green means that they're available, right? And so she's trying to say, well, that is what that means, but then she's wanting to give stipulations. So instead of me listening to, again, back to the Jesse Lee Peterson, you know, just saying when a man corrects certain things about his own, you know, upbringing and his relationship with his mother and all of this, that he'll stop listening to women. She's now wanting to tell me, I guess, explain the ins and outs of how that doesn't pertain in this instance, right? Which is kind of to my point, but then it's like, I don't even need to entertain whatever she's talking about. And all I want is an acknowledgement of, yes, sir, you are correct. Generally, at these checkouts, and of course, she wouldn't be intelligent enough to frame it this way, but, you know, almost all of the time, the green light means come use me, but then clearly some percentage of the time it doesn't mean that. And I certainly understand why you were headed that way. And in fact, as she's admonishing me, I'm looking to see, are these available? And as she's going, sir, and that was her volume was almost that loud, and that was the exact tone of voice, sir, which is, hey, you've done something wrong. You're one of my children, and I scold my children when my children need correcting. I correct my children. That's how she talked to me, right? And some would say, "What's the big deal?" Well, the big deal is I forgave the first transgression, but then I still have something to say about the nature of the green light. And that in my masculine presentment in some way potentially representing daddy and everybody's daddy issues. And now the males present need to, they are mostly concerned with mommy's feelings, right? And so it's also, Benton, the dehumanization of Benton, or a refusal to even accept that I might be. And again, the idea of it being desirable to be a human. And so ultimately, they're not willing to accept me on the basis of what they are, which is correct, because what I am and what they are not the same thing. So back to shout out to Highly Suspect, who I'm not sure, maybe he's still around. I'm not exactly sure, but he might pop in from time to time, perhaps. And I didn't agree with him when he first said this years ago during the pandemic, but he said, "You'll never convince me that I'm the same as what these people are." And he had his own way of verbalizing that. So I'm not saying it quite like he said it, but that's what he meant. And I pushed back a little bit, and eventually I thought about it, and I said, "You know what, man, you're right." I said, "You're absolutely right. We're not the same thing as these people." Now, that doesn't necessarily mean him and I were I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity. Well, that's not for me to judge or determine or assess. But see, if my read of the situation is correct, and these three beings are given over to these wicked forces and these demons, if they'd given themselves over to the service of that evil, then we ain't the same thing. And in fact, it is every knee shall bow. And, we are serving two different masters. And part of their service to their master, and the demons that infest these three individuals, their service to what they're going to view as their master. Well, they see me for what I am. Well, that number one has to be treated like it's guilty of something. So my failure was in her tone and in her admonishment. It triggered something in the neurodivergence and the undiagnosed fake autism, and that's all dead. See, that all belongs to the dead flesh. And so I recognized it in the moment, and I was free to not react. And in fact, I delayed my own. Now, I didn't delay my reaction. I did immediately respond with a ma'am, but hilariously, that was neither here nor there for her, right? I mean, she's, I don't know that she's used to being spoken to that way, but, in her world, it didn't seem to be, and maybe it's just fair enough. He's talking to me the way I talk to him. And all I'm trying to convey is, hey, like, this is, maybe you don't like being talked to that way. Well, it turned out it didn't really bother her, which is fine. I mean, who knows what she's been through? Maybe she grew up getting talked to that way. I mean, I don't fucking know. Maybe that's just what she expects. But, a lot of these environments in America have become so matriarchal that, again, I'm mostly going to be treated like I don't have a standing. And then, so now you get into male hierarchies where the first thing, the male that this had nothing to do with, but remember, a lot of these younger males have been socialized to really, to always revert to placating mommies. So he's going to have something inside of him that's going to predict and respond to mommy's emotions, because that's in some way how he navigated his upbringing, is through, female authority at school, female authority in the home, lack of male authority, right? And then, because you had female school teachers, but they were under the authority of male administration and male principals, right? And, a bunch of kids who all had fathers. I caught the tail end of, and yeah, some of them would have had step siblings or whatever you want to call that. But is this cop out here radaring? This is, wow, really? Or am I just, that ain't a cop. Okay, that's the general public. And look, first I thought that was a cop. Oh, he's getting the snow off his windshield. Okay, that makes sense. Had a lot of snow in his car. It snowed, and the farther we go to Abilene, it may not be the city limits of Abilene, but some of these areas probably got over a foot of snow, I'm guessing, based on what I'm seeing. And the way it gets windy, the drifts and all that. But we're in Texas. And see, I don't operate on those levels. And meanwhile, you got a man representing daddy, and I don't have a choice in that, but symbolically. And now it's the parents are fighting dynamic. And what is that? And these humans, their own hatred and their own resentments and their own stagnated, wounds of their childhood and things that have not been resolved. And then you add in the potential drug abuse, psych meds, prescription drugs, mental illness, right? And to recognize, and to sort of cut to the chase in a way, it's a reminder for Benton. It's like the main thing for me is to get whatever I need to get as far as, in this case, what do we call provisions, to get in there, get my provisions and get out unscathed. So, and really forgetting that I'm in Oklahoma City, I really should have been on guard because of that. Because I've had other incidents. I've had other run-ins in Oklahoma City. But all right, I'm going to pass this guy here on the flat ground before we get to that. Before we get up yonder to the overpass. Oh, I got to make sure I don't miss my turn. I got to take a different highway in 8 miles. And see, the old Benton would have sort of wanted to settle everybody's hash. See, I've divorced myself from the settling of the hash, and a lot of this was just me sort of patiently, but then asserting myself at various points just to kind of remind them, well, I'm choosing, y'all aren't making me do anything. I'm choosing not to, because they've told me to basically shut the fuck up, and it's like, well, okay, I'm free to do that, but I'm also free to just let it die down and just bring it all back up again, right? And then only to be told more or less that I shouldn't have an opinion and I should shut the fuck up and I'm annoying and they don't want to hear it. It's like, yeah, those are all opinions. Like, it doesn't, you say, and I don't even get into it with them, but my attitude is like, well, y'all saying that don't make it so. I mean, I understand I got my own opinions about it. I got my own view of what's happened here and I got my own opinions, but I mean, clearly we're not going to agree and that's okay. But, and what is it all at the end of the day? It's what is it? What energetically it's Americans have internalized authoritarianism, which is what? It's a form of anger and hatred. Authoritarianism is a form of hatred and anger, right? And so the one guy really let the horse out of the barn when he was basically like, you could tell part of his frustration and probably society at large's frustration is, and there's a lot of exceptions, clearly. In fact, I found a few exceptions myself this morning, but in the Walmart, but I'd say in, 3 out of 75% of the time, 65 to 75% of the time, people were just sort of over each other. It's at the level of the general public. And see, to me, he represents the general public in that area. And to him, I represent some portion of the general public. But then, he probably knows that male Walmart worker to some extent, or they're at least familiar with each other. And then he at least, has enough familiarity with the woman, if not to just, reflexively out of his own needs. And what's his need? His need is to keep mommy's emotions under wraps. And so you've got multiple generations of males that have now been raised based on sort of walking on eggshells around mommy's emotions. And see, and I don't think I ever would have been willing to live that way. And I know myself pretty well. And, looking back, if I had been in an environment, I just don't know that I don't know that I would have processed and just even, and then sort of you get into the, as a young person, maybe lacking some not even social skills, sort of being oblivious to certain dynamics. I think I was just mostly oblivious, even if there was some management of mommy's emotions to be done. Didn't have what it took at a young age to, to detect and manage that. So, what's it say about a society when, a sizable portion of the males, by the time they get to 12 years old, probably have a lot of experience and have become quite adept at walking on eggshells, accurately walking on eggshells around mom's feelings. And then, with the government conspiring in a lot of ways to remove the father from the home. And of course, they started with the blacks, but then that's just like the government is starting, the tyranny is really getting the in-your-face, jackbooted oppressor thugs taken to the streets and, running roughshod over the populace. And yes, some of that was the BLM, Antifa, and the protesters. But then as far as just government agents, jackboots on the streets rounding people up and, police actions, it's directed first towards the immigrants or people who might fit a profile of an immigrant, right? If I affect a Eastern European accent, will I get profiled at some point? And I'm sort of joking, but I don't know, maybe. And I kind of lost my larger point, but I think y'all's brains will you'll fill it in, right? That, all of these precedents, all of these things have come to pass. And, now we're back to the Jesse Lee Peterson, or is it Peterson? The Jesse Lee, whatever his name is, the black fella, his contention of the, men shouldn't listen. He's not saying they shouldn't listen to women. He said, once the men resolve what they need to resolve, and he said the final stage of that apparently is to forgive their mother, and to truly forgive her. And then, and a lot of it is for these type of things. Then the man will no longer listen to the woman. So in some way, Jesse Lee's identifying the error of listening to the woman. Well, if we go back through the story, and let's not do that, but it was me just simply not listening to her, and her in some way sort of inserting herself into what I'm doing. And it is a seeking to dominate, right? To seize control in some way through the sir. And then, so, now we got the autism kicking in. So I just sort of pause and I'm like, ma'am. And now, I've given her my attention. So now she's explaining to me, oh, these are the only two working, and it's like, okay, well, thanks, I guess. Meanwhile, I was in the process of figuring that out for myself. But, the fact is, there's a lot of 50-year-old bozos that come in there first thing in the morning and they don't know their fucking head from a hole in the ground. And, they won't be able to figure it the fuck out. I mean, so yeah, I recognize those dynamics. That's a thing. They just simply won't be able to figure it out. So, she's based on pattern recognition. She's probably, doing what's appropriate overall. It's the tone, right? And I did address the tone on my way out the door, which is like, hey man, and not to her, just to the guy who was trying to follow me out. It's basically like, I don't really appreciate the employee's tone that they've taken with me here, and he's just kind of doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on the more or less, why don't you shut the fuck up? Right? It's like, well, I'm certainly in the process of leaving. I might do a live stream and talk about it for 2 hours. I mean, who even knows? Yeah, hit them brakes. But yeah, I don't mind them going slow. I'm following a slow mover through an interchange. Part of safe driving is, maybe I could have passed, but it would not have been reasonable and prudent to do so. So I waited. And now we pass. Maybe. Hang on, the company's. StreamYard won't give up the mic. I can't text to speech him. I'm gonna have to I'll be right back. I'm gonna have to try to type here. And it's funny how, in my own masculinity and manhood, I know not to listen to women, except, in certain, and more specifically, not listen to what they're saying, but to take in the totality of the message, right? Take in the totality of the message. But see, I knew something was way off when I first got in there, because there was like 4 stalkers that were all males. But the first one I noticed was this kind of real rough chick, but she appeared to be in her 20s. You could just tell she had a rough mouth on her, and she was talking to one-on-one conversation with one of her male coworkers. Boy, this is just, we're on a damn sheet of ice and snow now. Yeah, no clear lane here. And this is, I think, Wichita Falls, if I'm not mistaken. And then pretty soon, a group of 4 of the males were all having a conversation. They're standing in a particular alignment, kind of out in the, and this is on the grocery side, and they're, it's hard to explain, but the way they're standing is structured in a certain type of way. It has a meaning, at the level of body language and the way people stand and the type of conversation they're having, right? And so I walk up, but I'm shopping. So I start to steer my basket into this, and I recognize, I'm just going to go around this conflagration, right? This alignment. And so moving into the space, and again, on some level, whether I want to or not, my mere presence represents daddy and authority and all of these things that are historically have been associated with masculinity, but they're now associated with not femininity, they're associated with women in American society. And so she immediately starts asserting her authority or her perceived authority over these four males of a similar age. And I could tell it was out of nowhere, and it was based on my appearance and her view. And I'm so sensitive to these dynamics that I just physically stopped where I was at, and I sort of just waited for her to conduct her orchestra and to pull her strings and to further communicate with my body language. Well, I'm not, because it's almost like I'm about to pass, even though I'm on the other side of a case. It's like I'm physically going to enter into that male grouping, and now she's going to address the four males, but then I'm somehow going to get included in that, even though she's not talking to me energetically and on a human psychological level. So I make sure to stop before I physically enter that grouping, and I wait for her to get done. And boy, she's just mean and ugly, and she's talking bad to them and just really dressing them down based on something that needs to get, and I don't remember the details, but she's really dressing them down. And of course, they're just taking it, right? And meanwhile, she's talking worse to them than when I talked to that lady, because I was neutral with the lady, other than I met her ugly tone of admonishment. I just gave it right back to her, but then I dropped it. And then I talked in just my normal, the way I talk, real matter of fact and blunt and direct. And when a woman talks like I'm talking right now, it don't bother nobody. But when a man starts talking like this, it bothers a lot of people. And a lot of those people that it bothers are males. And it bothers them because they haven't understood or this whole thing around Jesse Lee's version of the man, no longer listening to the woman. See, these guys have socialized. They want a woman around to listen to, right? Whereas I'm doing everything to make sure I don't accidentally end up where she might, try to imply that I'm under her authority, right? And I've even said, I've just been walking by sometimes and said, I don't work here. I mean, I hope you don't think you're talking to me. I don't work here. Like, what is this? I had in Bakersfield, not Bakersfield, in Barstow, California, out in the desert, in the, the jokes write themselves, the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas jokes write themselves. But some woman, again, she's a supervisor, and she's having a confab with some of the two male employees, and I'm walking through the area, and then out of nowhere comes a younger male pushing one of them shopper, carts where he's, shopping for the people, and he's wanting to join the party. And now they're like physically starting to encircle me, and I just sort of blast my way through the whole thing. And of course, she's in charge, so she's kind of looking at me like I did something wrong. And it's like I don't work here. Like, I don't know what y'all are doing. It's, and I keep it moving, but my attitude is like, I don't know what y'all got going on. I'm not involved. Like, I'm keeping it moving over here. Like, I'm almost physically got hemmed up in whatever that is. Because I had one path in and one path out, and the person pushing the basket, the self, shopping for people to go load in their car or whatever that's called, that cart, he came up at the perfect time to almost hem me in. So my thing was, I just fucking pedaled to the metal and just motored on through there. I sped up and got the fuck out of Dodge, and she's wanting to. And another time, a woman damn near tried to run me over in the same Walmart. And again, I think she thought she was authority, and as I walked past, she's like turning back and looking at me like, acting like I did something to her. And it's like, I'm like, lady, you almost ran into me. Like, I'm a customer walking through this. I don't know. What do you think this is? Basically, like, I guess she thought I was going to jump out of her way or something. And so this is what society is. And it's not getting bad. This is what society is. It's the man will dominate man under man's own injury, so much so that the majority of the males are ruled over day in and day out in these it's not a male-dominated society; it's female-dominated, which is fine, except indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. That's really what I should have told them when they, I should have just told them what I was. Indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. See, that's the answer to. It's funny to sort of forget myself, but when the guy, by his body language, I'm watching at the checkout, and it's like 50-50. Maybe he's going to walk over here and try to physically do something to me, or at least physically make his presence known. Indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. Indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. See, that's such a specific thing spiritually and energetically. And I already sort of had that concept in my head. And then I took a Greyhound bus to LA on my way to Santa Barbara and eventually up the coast. I think I went all the way to SF, Half Moon Bay, at least. I don't know. I don't remember. But I remember I got off a Greyhound, Skid Row. Of course, if you're in a Greyhound downtown in pretty much any city, that's the worst. That's ground zero. We're bombed out and depleted. So that was Skid Row. And 4:30 in the morning, I had to like a 1.5 mile hike on foot with a pack, a ruck, and we're ruck marching to a city bus stop to catch a connecting bus to Camarillo, to Thousand Oaks, I think, to Ventura, if I'm remembering correctly. So I probably was trying not to have to go to Oxnard. Not that I got anything around. Oxnard's fine, but I think that was the way to Ventura at the time, connecting buses. And then I think or maybe that bypass, I don't remember, but whatever the particulars were. I don't know. There's so much snow. I don't even know if this is a lane, but I'm headed for it. Well, thank you, sir. He's getting over for me. That was nice of him. See, that's what I would do. Pull over to the right and let him pass. And check the battery here. So I recognize that if this was perhaps the worst time, one of the worst times to be walking through there, because really nobody's around but homeless people at 4:30 in the morning, for the most part, with only a few exceptions, and mentally ill, drug addicted, the worst of the worst, Skid Row, LA. And I continued to repeat that out loud with my, moving as quick as I could, marching through there, and just to make sure everybody understood this is what's coming through and it ain't stopping, and it's going to keep it moving, and let it live, if you would, please. Thank you. Indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. That probably would have been a good way to convey, well, fair enough. We can, at the checkout, we can leave it there. I've made my point, and then, indomitable, volatile, loose cannon. I'm just going to keep it moving out the door, and the most amazing part to me is I managed to accurately scan all my groceries and not double scan anything. I actually got out of it, and without accidentally stealing anything. But anyway, I think I've gotten all, whatever this was, I've gotten it out of my system. So, bye.